First of all, Kathy and Mick, they own a small business. They have 2 children. They worked hard to send their children to an independent school. They have invested wisely. They give back to the community. They support other local businesses and they deliver jobs for local people. We should encourage them and not punish them. These are the people that will rebuild our community. They have worked hard for 60 to 80 hours each week. They've given up weekends. They didn't attend family events and went without holidays. Why? Because they knew that working hard would give their children the best start in life. It is people like Kathy and Mick who can assist with the housing crisis. We should be encouraging them to invest, to have more rental properties. But no, this Labor government have put a rent tax to encourage these small investors to look in other states. It is time for Labor to stop punishing these Victorians for their own waste and mismanagement. That's right. Victoria is broke. The 2023-24 state budget is a typical Labor budget. It is about increasing taxes on those that can least afford it, increasing taxes on businesses, taxes that will cost jobs in our state, and the worst part is they are targeting aspirational Victorians, not rich, aspirational Victorians who are working hard to build their future. The people who are working hard to build their future are the people the government must encourage and not punish or restrict. For every parent who works 2 jobs to have their child attend an independent school means it is one less child placing pressure on the already stretched government school system. Every emergency services worker who is invested in a property to build their future means one less family in the public housing waiting list. We need more properties for rent, not less. This budget is so brutal in so many different ways. It is sad I only have 15 minutes to point it out, the concerns, and place on record the ideas to build a better Victoria, not tax a state that is broke due to mismanagement of this incompetent Labor government. And it's not just us saying this, there's many out there that are saying it. In the Herald Sun, the state debt is set to skyrocket to $171 billion, almost $70,000 for every household, even though Victorians face a decade of pain. Budget forecasts predict interest rates to service the staggering debt will hit $22 million a day by 2026-2027. While the tax will climb, revenue will climb to $40 billion, double what it was in 2015-16. Rating agencies said the budget did little to improve Victoria's credit score, which remains the lowest of any state, and employer groups warned Victoria was now the worst state in the country to do business. University of New South Wales economics professor Richard Holden said the government failed to make the tough choices given the debt would continue to grow. And he said the government was wrong to blame the debt predicament on COVID-19, saying the cost blowout on major projects and big spending had contributed. There was actually a lot of debt accumulated prior to COVID. Framing it all as paying back COVID is maybe too clever by half. And as I said in that, our debt will go to $1.4 billion by 26-27. Let's put that in perspective, Speaker. That is $22 million per day. That is $900,000 an hour. It is $225,000 by the time I finish this speech. In a 15-minute period, we are going to be paying $225,000. Imagine how many houses we could build in Victoria for social housing and actually get a return and give people a chance in life. So even with the new taxes, the cuts to jobs and projects, Victoria will increase its debt. Speaker, I'm going to focus on the rent tax because there's over 800,000 people that rent here in Victoria. And this tax is nothing more than going to place extra pressure on them. During a housing crisis, this government is finding a way to make it more unaffordable. And for every person that can't live in their own houses or rent a property, they're going to end up on the housing waiting list. And we already know the housing waiting list is out of control. It is the growth areas like mine that will be hit the first and hardest. And I have to ask the government, why do they hate investors so much? The investors that are putting properties into those areas that are giving people in my community the opportunity to have a house over their head, to give them a purpose and a meaning. But instead, this government wants to stop investors investing here. Now, doing some very basic sums on a $400,000 loan for a $650,000 property in Officer, one of our fastest growing areas, it would cost, including interest and taxes and insurance, around about $690 per week to run that household. The average rent is $550. People are already losing money to keep housing affordable in our state. But what does the government want? As said in the Herald Sun, Victorians with more than one property will pay a minimum of $5,000 over the next decade, with a new tax of $500 for investment properties on land between $50,000 and $100,000 and $970,000 on that up to $300,000. This is unfair on those renters who will end up paying that price. We need to make sure that we are ensuring that we can keep prices down on rent, and the way to do that is less tax in here in our state. Businesses have been hit. WorkCover. Businesses have also been hit with a 42% hike in WorkCover premiums, making the scheme one of the most expensive in the country. That's a tax on jobs, Speaker. That's a direct tax on small businesses who the only thing that they can cut at the moment is staff. They can't cut the costs of how much it costs to buy a bun, a hamburger, lettuce or tomato. They can't reduce the cost in electricity, which is skyrocketing, or gas, which is more pressure. The only way these businesses can save money now is to sack people. And that places more pressure on the economy. Those people will be coming back and need more assistance. What are other people saying about this current budget? Not just what the Victorian Liberals are saying. S&P Global Ratings Analysis Anthony Walker said the budget had some headroom for the state's AA rating. We consider fiscal recovery to be a slow and long process. Despite some positive developments, Victoria's fiscal outlook remains weak compared to other Australian states. CPA Australian Senior Tax Policy Manager Eleanor Kasparis said Victoria was now Australia's least attractive state to run a business or buy an investment property. Why would you want to or be proud of a budget that makes it the least attractive to run a business or the least attractive to buy an investment property? Victorians have been forced to pay for decisions made by their own government during COVID. She said, this budget threatens to make the bad situation worse. Victoria used to be the place to be, now it's the place not to be. And Victoria Chamber of Commerce and Industry Chief Paul Guerra said, today's state budget takes Victoria from the most locked-down state in Australia to one of the highest taxing, as the government continues to hit business with the bill for the debt incurred throughout the pandemic and cost blowouts on the WorkCover scheme. Victorian Council of Social Services CEO Emma King is among those concerned that the tax increases could lead to higher rents. 3AW host Tom Elliott even goes on to say to blame the Reserve Bank for the pandemic for the state's debt was utter rubbish. He said Victorians were forced to pay for the mistakes the state government has made during their management of COVID. He also slammed a lie being sold to the impact the levy would have on the rental market. The government has said this will not impact rents, but we all know, of course, it will. Speaker, these are the people that are going to get impacted. The government, each and every one of them, whether they're on the back bench, front bench or in between, they're going to have to go back out to their communities as these WorkCover increases by 42% and explain to them that, guess what, you're going to have to sack staff now to recover those costs. Or the alternative, and I note some shaking their heads, there's an alternative here, let's go to the alternative. They could increase the cost of everything in their premises, in their store, goes up, putting pressure on cost of living. And I note the member says, or we could let WorkCover collapse. The government has been in charge of WorkCover for 2 decades. It's only failing because Labor have failed WorkCover so bad that they now have to increase the premiums by 42%. How could you sit there? How could any member of Labor sit there and go, someone else is responsible for this other than the Victorian Labor Party, who have allowed WorkCover to get out of control? I will go out to my community and explain to them that it is Labor are the reason that you are going to have to put staff off. Labor are the reason you'll have to close your doors. Labor are the reason that you are putting your investment property on the market, and Labor is the reason that rents are going up in my community. All the way through Casey and Cardinia, the renters out there will feel every pinch of this. Every time a rent increase goes up. Some might say it's only $50 a month. For someone who is already paying 50 to 60% of their income in rent, $50 a month is everything. And those on the other side just simply don't understand. When you implement these taxes, they end up at the bottom end there, not with the investors. Or worse, people will take those properties off the market. When it comes to the police here in Victoria, obviously it's one of my portfolios, the Andrews Labor government were very proud before the election to announce they would increase the police numbers in this term by 502. By 1 July 2024, we were going to have 502 extra police officers here in Victoria. Sadly, today, as we speak, there is 800 vacancies in the Victoria Police. 800, because they can't even replace those that are leaving. There are 800 down on the numbers they were as of the election. To add to that, they still need an extra 500. So to get the 1,302 extra police they need, they would need to double the size of the Victorian Police Academy. Obviously, that's not going to happen. This government cannot deliver those police that they promised. There is no new money for infrastructure in the Victoria Police. The only police station that will be getting renovated or updated will be Rochester. It was flooded. They deserve it. That community needs and deserves that money for that new station up there in Rochester. But not in Clyde North. That money's come out of the budget. Not in Narre Warren, where the station's no longer suitable for need. That money's come out of the budget. That is no longer there. The only thing we've seen on Clyde North since it was promised to be delivered and opened by 2022 is a sign that went up in 2022 with a new date of 2025. And I almost guarantee I'll get to the next election and the only thing I'll see change is that sticker will change and it will no longer be 2025, it'll be after the next election, because that money has been removed from the budget. And you're doing it because they've run out of money. We need to make sure that the police have got the support they need. Here in Victoria, our road toll increases. Our road toll has increased by 36%. There is many reasons around the road toll increasing. Some will say due to the condition of roads. Some will say about driver error, drink driving, drug driving. All of these play into what happens when people die on our roads. And we all know, more than ever, over the last weekend, the impact of people dying on our roads in our state. And that's why the government has a responsibility to deliver on the things that they've promised. What did they promise? They promised roadside drug testing targets would be up, yet they're down by 33%. More people are dying on our roads from drug driving than any time in history. And yet we've got 1 million less tests in Victoria. 1 million less roadside drug tests. There is no excuse for that. Zero excuse at all. It can only be funding. The government haven't given the funding to the Victoria Police to deliver what they need to deliver. When it comes to corrections and youth justice, we want to make sure that our young people have a genuine opportunity in life. We want to make sure that if they do get into the justice system, that everything is put in place so we can get them work ready, return them to education, or give them into the support services they need. Yet this government, when they're running out of money and they're spending money on a prison that is currently not open, they're spending money in corrections, $36 million to keep one prison closed, millions to keep a youth justice centre closed, and they're cutting $5 million from community crime prevention, meaning there's fewer initiatives to tackle these crimes before they happen. A $10 million cut from community-based order supervision management. That means more young people won't get the support they need when they enter the justice system. More chance of reoffending. That is a bad outcome for Victoria. That is a bad outcome for communities. And I've said, and I'll say, the previous minister I was quite happy to work with, talk to, and we actually shared a lot of similar ideas. And I'm sure that Ben Carroll, now Minister for Public Transport, was then Minister for Youth Justice and for Corrections, would agree. He'd be disappointed that there are now cuts to the programs that he once supported. And now there is cuts in this budget to the programs that he said, on record, were making changes to the young people in our community. You can't come in here and say they're making changes and then cut $25 million from those programs. It just simply doesn't work. This is a bad budget for Victorians. It's got a rent tax, a schools tax and a job tax and services cuts. I think this bill, this legislation, will create less jobs here in our state.